So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being us today for this panel. My name is Décary-Hétu. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Flare Systems, a Montreal cybersecurity company. And we're really glad to be hosting this panel with some very interesting guests today. And I'm going to try by letting them introduce themselves. So I will go in the order that I see on my screen. And so we'll start with you, Azin.
Sure. Hi, my name is Azin Moinaddini. I am the Director of Cloud Identity and Access Management Strategy at RBC. And I've been working in the cyberspace for about 4 years and in cloud and identity for just under a year now. I love it. It's very exciting. Cloud is the newest, most exciting technology, and identity is right at the center of it. So enjoying it so far.
Oh, well, thank you for being with us this morning. We also have Bhupinder with us today.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Bhupinder Singh, and I've joined from UK. And so my background is I run a startup called Openitio. We specialize in open banking solution for the bank, basically open banking in a box based on some industry standards. And today on the cybersecurity, the cloud security, I'm going to address some of the challenges which we have faced in UK putting open banking onto the cloud infrastructure and how identity is very important to solve that problem. So looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here. And last but not least, we have Peter with us.
Thank you, David. Good morning. Peter Merkulov here with you from Southern California. I'm VP of products at 1Password. We are a password and secrets management company. I've been in the cyberspace for over, I think, 18 years now, started back in 2004. To me, identity is a very exciting topic. It's right at the center, as Azin said, and with cloud information that definitely became more complex. Looking forward to discussion today.
Thank you. Excellent. So I'm really glad to have this very international panel with people from Canada, the States, and the UK. We may also have an additional participant who may join us in the coming minutes. So today we're going to be talking about a few points about cloud identity security. And the one point of discussion I want to throw out there to begin today was to talk about who should be involved in organizations when we're talking about cloud identity security. This is something that is going to be mission critical for organizations. This is going to be something that everyone wants to be involved. You're going to see, the DevOps teams. You're going to have, your cloud architecture teams. You're going to have your business group. You're going to have security, IT. So a whole melting pot of people will want to get their fingers into this thing. And the main question that I want to pick up today is to talk about, well, who should be involved and who should, be leading this type of project. And so I know, Peter, that you had some thoughts on this question. So maybe we can start with you and would like to hear your input on this.
Yeah, absolutely, David. And I think you did a really good intro there. You listed a lot of teams that need to be involved. An interesting element here that I wanted to point out is, identity and access management is not a new problem, right? This problem has been out there for a long time. However, in today's world, especially with cloud transformation, as I said before, the complexity increased quite a bit. And so did the number of teams involved increase quite a bit. You have more and more stakeholders. You have teams that you didn't have to consider before, like DevOps or DevSecOps, for example, that need to be a part of that. It's definitely a very, very cross-functional effort. And in my view, and really in my conversations with customers, what I'm seeing is it needs to be a priority and it needs to be on the radar very high up the food chain, say on the CIO level, CSO level, maybe even, in some cases, go up to CFO and CEO. I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues here have to say about that as well.
Yeah, so I don't know who wants to go next. Azin, maybe can I hear from you?
Yeah, I can add to that. So I definitely agree. It does need to be cross-functional. Every stakeholder, I think, is going to have different ideas to contribute and different use cases that they'll need to work through as we design the programs. I do agree that it is identity and access management is an old problem, and we've been working on it for quite some time. I think in cloud, it would almost be considered a new problem just because the landscape is so different. It's things like non-human IDs. We never had to worry about them on the scale that we do today, like privileged escalation, effective permissions. I almost think that we have to think of it as a new problem and reimagine how we deal with it. But I agree, it does definitely need executive support. And I don't know about you guys, but we have no trouble getting that. Our executives are very interested in how we design our cloud identity programs.
Yeah, and Bhupinder, are you in line with our other participants? And
absolutely. So even in my career of 17 years dealing with identity access management, identity is not a new problem, as Peter said. I think challenges have increased as we move to cloud. It has not gone down, to be honest. It has gone, upwards in terms of how do you, make sure it is trusted? How do you make sure it is available when needed? So all those challenges have just, let's just say, get a little bit more complicated. But what I can say is, obviously, without the senior stakeholder, as mentioned, whether it's from bank or any institute, it's hard to solve. And I'm pretty sure, a lot of us have seen, whenever the hacking happens, so the first fingers pointed is the people like a CISO and the people who are managing the access management. And frankly speaking, most of the time, in my experience, what I've seen is it's usually identity is not given priority, that the traditional approach of saying firewall is secured, perimeter is secured, that no longer suits the cloud model. It's way beyond that. You cannot rely on the old tools. And obviously you need to be cognizant of that. Now we are talking about multi-cloud platform as well. So although in principle, all cloud platforms look and behave same, but underneath there are some differences, which need to be addressed in order to make sure that identity is secure on all these cross platforms. And from, I think, as Azin said, that, from bank's perspective, it became more critical if they are, using multiple cloud platforms. So buying has to be from the top, but then direction and solutionizing would always come from the technicians and the consultant. That's how I see how this problem can be solved.
And go ahead. Well, actually, one of the thing that you mentioned is, this notion of multi-cloud and, being in multiple places online. I'm sure Azin, RBC must have quite a few cloud up there. So how do you effectively manage and work and manage identities basically in this heterogeneous, environment basically?
Yeah, I was actually just going to jump in and say I agree that multi-cloud actually just makes things a lot more complicated. It's almost like we need 2 different or 3 different strategies across the board, as much as the guiding principles are the same. But in some cases, tooling and implementation might be completely different. So it definitely complicates things.
And is there a reason exactly why you're using multiple clouds? Wouldn't it be easier just to use one cloud, for example? So I don't know, Peter, how do you manage this kind of multi-cloud environment?
So the one point I also wanted to bring up with regards to multi-clouds is that complexity that we've been talking about managing that across several clouds from several providers, for example, also has several other dimensions. For example, you are not dealing with just one type of a cloud application, like infrastructure as a cloud or a platform as a cloud. You usually have the whole variety, the whole spectrum. You have infrastructure as a cloud, you have platform as a cloud. You also have software as a service as well, right? And so it's not just really managing this across different service providers, but also kind of setting that strategy across different flavors of the clouds across those providers. And yeah, every provider would have a solution for you, usually. But integrating those together, honestly, in practice, represents another challenge as well.
Yeah. And maybe, Bhupinder, are there tools, strategies that you've used in the past that could help solve this problem?
So yeah, I mean, what I was about to say is that, as I said, although cloud can have subtle differences, but one thing which I can appreciate while working with, the 3 or 4 big cloud providers is they are working together to define standards. Okay, so different standards for security, identity, standard for access, frameworks and software being developed. So one good part is that at least even the cloud providers are understanding that if they have to be, selling this competitive experience and obviously ease for a bank to or a service to, use, these standards are being developed. So all I can say is, that's the plus side, or that the initiative is obviously going on. The standards are being developed and they are equally available on all the cloud platforms, to some extent, as like they're going to be 1% or little differences. But in principle, there are a lot of shared standards being developed, which are getting adopted across, cloud provider. And their foundation is not based on the cloud. These standards are predominantly were used in on-premise, and then now they are graduating, or let's just say, graduating to a higher complex environment. So it's like a person getting, bachelor's, now this is like a master's degree, but similar standards are getting progressive. And obviously some of the standards are getting deprecated as well. So not all standards see the, end of the tunnel, because not all standards going to be suitable for the cloud deployment. And so that's where I see, Microsoft, Azure, AWS, GCP, Google Cloud, and even Alibaba. There is a harmonization of standard. So which is the good part. But I said, like, they are not all going to be same. There are slight differences. I think that's where the critical decision need to be made, in terms of standard and the tooling adoption for the clouds.
So we'll get back to that point in a second. Just want to welcome an additional guest to our panel. So Anshul, thank you for joining us. Maybe we can give you just a few seconds to introduce yourself to our audience.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Anshul Kaushik here. I'm the country manager for Thycotic Centralized. I handle the business. I've been in the PAM and identity space for nearly 7 years now. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So maybe we can get back to this idea of standardization. So Peter, Azin, and Anshul as well. How hopeful are you that we're going to have standards at some point? Are we looking at something that's going to be around, in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I mean, how much of kind of a panacea is that going to be? Peter.
As a product guy, I would never predict timelines. So I agree. I think seeing that the standards are being developed, as Bhupinder mentioned, that's a really good sign. I think we're going to see some solutions. Some solutions exist even today. You can use third-party solutions for across multiple clouds for identity. The challenge now is kind of the right balance, in my view, between standardization and continued innovation, right? If you look at the past in terms of what's been happening with the standards in the IT world, by the time the standard is hugely adopted and fully rolled out, there's usually a couple of front runners that are going much ahead and bringing something that cannot work within the boundaries of the standards. Yep. But I do think that the standards will help us at least narrow down the approach, and definitely will make life a little easier, hopefully, in the nearest future.
Is it?
Yeah, just to add to what Peter was saying, I mean, I'll look to the product guys to say when standardization is coming, but I do think we will get some form of it, but I do also worry that cloud is changing so quickly that I don't know if it'll ever catch up.
So not too much hope on the standardization of the access, basically, but some hope still. Anshul, maybe we can continue and kind of have your input. I don't know if you were following the conversation. So on your end, kind of when you're looking at standards and this, in this field, do you feel as though that could be the solution to the problem?
Well, I think, I'll go back to the comment that Azin made. This is what I would say is this is an evolving field, and I think standards are going to come along, but maybe not just enough in time and so forth. It's going to continuously evolve. So we're going to learn as we go, and we're going to formulate standards by phases and so forth. That's what I would see going forward, because I think this is, like I said, the fields have been around, it's evolving, and it's evolving very quickly for the market. Right. And we're experiencing a lot of growth and change as well. And we're learning that there's new things that come along with the cloud, especially as, when we work with customers, we see phases. What we see phases in is, okay, there was on-prem, that now predominantly there's a significant hybrid model, and then slowly and steadily working towards almost a significant cloud model, right? So standards are going to change because we're changing our how-to approach as well.
And, another thing that's been talked about a lot, in the industry when we're looking, for example, at secrets managers. So having something that can help us kind of manage all these identities. what role or what place do you see these secret managers playing in cloud identity security moving forward? Yeah, maybe Anshul, if you want to continue on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first step is what we see is three predominant players in the market, right? AWS, GCP, and Azure, right? There's others. What we probably would see is a centralized access model, right? That's where we need to consolidate identities and move from that point. Because when you look at the cloud, you see permissions and entitlements, right? And that's where I see it evolving to as a first step.
So maybe Peter, you had something to add on this motion, I guess.
Yes, I wanted to kind of build up on this and offer maybe a slightly different angle. I'm really glad you called it secrets management. I represent the company that basically has been very well known for its password management product. We've recently introduced secrets management product as well that works across multiple clouds. I think it's very, very important to recognize that, A, multi-cloud, as we discussed, that's just the reality today. B, I think Azin mentioned this in the beginning, really the complexity is dealing with multiple types of identities between, people and machines or processes. And the interesting point here from sort of the look from the past is when I talk to customers, they have a lot of different technology, and many of them have formal identity and access management projects, and they've been working on those for a while. It's interestingly enough that we still find passwords. It's not just secrets and everything else. Like almost every customer I talk to, they still have, even if they use single sign-on and everything else you can possibly imagine, there's still pockets in the organization where they use the traditional approach of having login and password. And that's, interestingly enough, I would think this problem would go away, but it doesn't. I think it's there to stay, and that also adds to the complexity.
I'll just add something on this one. To be honest, I think I would disagree with Peter slightly, because I think we are going away from the password, the age of passwords. I can't again say how long it will take, but I can give some idea what I think is possible. So one, I think we are moving toward, more what we call is a device-based authentication, or, the idea is that almost everyone owns a mobile phone today. And the identity companies, the big, many of the identity companies or the products, they are pushing that actually, if you are carrying a device, then why can't we authenticate and authorize using the device authorization? And once this mechanism is delegated to a consumer device or customer device, then all forms of biometrics are available, local authentication is available. So that's one way to looking toward the problem, because the passwords, yes, they have been now a nightmare, I think, being managing more and more service related or even the personal ones. So they will see, end of life sometime, but this is definitely one of the hard-hitting area, because I'm sure everybody knows that most of the hacks or compromises are like somebody left an administrative password, or somebody stole it, or somebody fished it through emails. So those things cannot be solved when we gonna unify that actually this could be solved using a device-based authentication. And there are models available, so and there are standards available for that. So, and that's the best part. So Android, Apple iOS, and any other platform will leverage same standards to say, hey, do you want to authenticate this identity who is the human, for the elevation of the password issue. The second thing which I would say is related to the system entities or identities which are obviously gone through the roof. I think as Java, I think this is a quote from Oracle and Java. They say there are 16 billion system using just the Java. So if we just think from that probably means there are 16 billion system talking to each other or in some shape or form, right? The idea is that there is this new initiative of centralizing the secrets now, and again allowing the delegation of the storage and everything. So definitely there is a learning from password management to secret management. That's how I see is the step up. But then also on the other side, I see the demise of password management to a centralized delegated authentication based on the devices. So that's how I see the future, which seems better for me,
I'll second that as well. What we're seeing in the industry is moving towards a passwordless mechanism, right? Yes, do passwords exist? Will they exist for a significant amount of time? Absolutely. But as we, as we work towards this work from anywhere, be anywhere model, you're going to have authentication from anywhere, right? From a perspective, and we'll move towards secrets management is a very large phrase. So we will move towards this passwordless authentication, MFA anywhere, everywhere, kind of, the first layer of access approach, and then work towards centralized access.
And well, Peter, go ahead. Like, is this something that you're seeing kind of, or integrating your products?
Anshul actually brought up another interesting point that I think I don't want to say neglected, but we haven't really talked about yet today. It's, the whole COVID situation, the whole work from home or work from anywhere trend has drastically changed the landscape and how this problem shaped up and what solutions actually can help as well. So I think we would need to consider that aspect moving forward. And reality is, this is not something that happened for a year or so. The trend of working from anywhere is probably here to stay, and it's going to leave its mark on the identity space as well, I think.
And I see you, Azin, nodding. Is that something that you're feeling that's going to continue on? And
yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't want to say we were unprepared for it. I think work from home has been around for a long time, but we were all kind of thrown into this situation where all of a sudden everybody's working from anywhere overnight. And this whole concept of identity is the new perimeter. You keep hearing it everywhere, but it's actually very true. And it's going to cause us to, I think, move faster towards things like passwordless than we had initially planned.
Yep. And yeah, go ahead.
David, sorry, I'll just add from, so again, what we, seeing is that, the traditional organization, to be honest, like when I say traditional, the one who were office-based, heavy on-premise, heavy, obviously like workforce coming to offices, those organizations are the ones which really struggled in the COVID world. The organizations which were in a hybrid mode, like, your workforce is a bit flexible, your services or, application are spread across on-prem and cloud, they were a bit better. And finally, the one which really, had no issues with, moving their workforce to remote locations were the one who were purely cloud native. Because, and again, the important point is, with these the markers where an organization is, the identity is traveling across. So if you see, first you have to verify identity on-premise, then within the hybrid model, and if it's truly cloud native, then it's only about the cloud native. So during the pandemic, there has been, obviously the, as I said, like organizations which were on the other side of spectrum, they had, less impact. Whereas the other organization I've seen scrambling, setting up VPNs, tunnel, giving employee the laptops because they cannot, have, other option. So that's how, the pandemic has shifted the remote working option. And I think it has obviously escalated the adoption of the cloud and cloud platform, and hence identity again coming to the forefront,
And I mean, anecdotally, we've seen in news report, questions about has, working from home and the pandemic actually created more security incidents, and because it's harder to manage the identity. Is that something that you've seen where the number of attacks have increased, the severity of the attacks have increased? How has this kind of changed kind of the day-to-day of securing these identities?
Oh, yeah, I think you can find a whole bunch of stats that show that the number of attacks went actually through the roof very quickly with pandemic. And some of those are very, very directly going after, identity theft or figuring out credentials or secrets that people are using. The one particular type of attack that I've seen, statistics on and worked on a solution for it is as simple as brute forcing a password on remote desktop application, honestly, because with working from home, again, that was an interesting trend. A lot of people at the very first phase of this really just try to leave the RDP open for, logging into their work computer, for example, or server at work. And that increase was, if I remember correctly, 3 or 4-fold. So it's a pretty significant step up.
Yeah, and we know ransomware used that to attack a lot of systems too. So, Anshul?
Yeah, so we've seen attacks go up significantly, right? And what we're seeing is that, again, it's this whole work from anywhere type of model, where now, like it or not, you as an individual are doing your job, and at the same front, which is your laptop, which is your endpoint, like it or not, at the end of the day, you're also checking your own personal email. The ability to separate those two profiles, the home and the personal, and that has become a very significant attack vector in the industry, and that's leading to now there's an opposite side of the cloud. Ransomware as a service is becoming significantly prominent as well.
So we're getting to the kind of the last minutes kind of this panel. So maybe I can start with you, Azin, and I wanted to close this thing off to ask you, so what should people be talking about in their organizations regarding cloud identity security? What is the type of conversation that they should be starting in their own organization to help protect their data, their information, and their people?
I think the most important thing to remember is that we're never done. So even if you design a cloud identity program, it fits all your needs today. Like we've said several times in this panel, but cloud is changing so quickly. As more applications and more data move into the cloud, identity is going to need to be secured better because it's going to become more vulnerable. Threat actors are going to continue to evolve also. So I think in all parts of security, but especially with identity and cloud, I think it's really important to remember that we're never done and we have to keep evolving.
A very, very, very good advice. Bhupinder, do you have one kind of tip or conversation we should be having internally in organizations?
Absolutely. So I think, one good part is the tooling is changing, but the security principles have not changed much. So good practices which were a bit leniently adopted in the on-premise should be now strict. So, for example, zero trust, least privilege access, authenticate and authorize everybody. So some of the guiding, most of the guiding principles and framework remain same. And based on that, the organization tried to say what standards we can adopt, which are cloud agnostic, tooling agnostic, and then tooling will come in. So don't go shop tooling, shop standards, work on standard, because that's what the organization gonna benefit more from. And that will also send a clear message to industry that the consumer, in case the organization, they know what they want, right? They want standards, they want standard across the platform. And that's what I would say advise, So work on the frameworks and try to adopt standards and participate in the standards.
Thank you for your input. Peter, any last words?
Yeah, Azin and Bhupinder brought up two really good points here. I absolutely agree. This is going to be evolving. You kind of need to look at that as a process. Bhupinder said there's no tooling that's going to save you, and definitely I would say please don't look for a silver bullet in a tool. Define it. It needs to be really a strategy, and it needs to evolve. And if it's not set on the strategy level, if it's not an evolving process, then it's going to be more difficult, and there's going to be more risks involved.
Excellent, thank you. And Anshul?
Yeah, I would say I always like to stick to the basics. I think organizations need to do a good job of mapping. What that means is understand what the cloud means to them first and foremost, right? Are you using cloud as an infrastructure as a service? Are you using SaaS applications? Or are you using platform as a service? Once you have these three things mapped out and defined, create processes to manage the identities around them, right? Because we say the word cloud, but it actually means quite a bit. So going back to the basics, understanding the utilization of cloud within your organization is the first and one of the most significant steps your organization should be looking at today.
Excellent. So I'll take maybe the last minute to wrap things up. And I think what is really interesting that we talked about today was the fact that C-level executives appear to be interested in this problem and realize the significance, the importance of this problem. And what I've been hearing today is that there are actually a lot of solutions and a lot of ways to implement the security. And one phrase that could sum it up, and it goes back to what Peter was saying, is basically security is going to be, it's not a product, it's more of a process that we need to put in place, something that's going to change over time. And I think this is kind of really positive, and I don't like to be the fear mongerer, but actually, provide solutions. And what we're hearing is that at some point in the future, Peter wouldn't commit to how long that would happen, but standards are coming at some point. And I think it is important to look at kind of more theoretical solutions, coming more from the academic kind of background. It's nice to have kind of looking at theory and then looking how can we put this in practice. So this was extremely informative. So I want to thank all of you for being with us today, all of our audience as well. And we'll be continuing these conversations. I'm sure you people are easy to find on LinkedIn and elsewhere. So thank you all for participating. You've been very generous today with your time and your knowledge. So take care and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.